Marcus sat frozen in front of his computer screen, reading through the file on James Wright. His coffee had gone cold in his hand, forgotten as the story unfolded before his eyes. James Wright had joined the Riverside Police Department 20 years ago, fresh out of the academy and eager to make a difference in his community. The file showed a picture of a young man in uniform, proud and strong. With the same eyes as the boy Marcus had met that morning, the commendations told a story of exceptional service. James had saved 3 children from a burning apartment building in his second year on the force. He had talked down an armed robbery suspect without firing a shot, preventing what could have been a deadly confrontation. He had organized a youth mentorship program that had helped dozens of at-risk kids stay out of trouble. Year after year, the awards piled up: Officer of the Year, Community Service Award, Medal of Valor, but it was the incident from 2 years ago that made Marcus's hands shake as he scrolled through the documents. On a rainy November evening, Sergeant James Wright had responded to a domestic disturbance call in one of the rougher neighborhoods of Riverside. When he arrived at the scene, he found a man holding his girlfriend hostage with a knife. High on drugs and threatening to kill her, James had entered the apartment alone, trying to negotiate. According to witness statements, he had kept his weapon holstered, his hands up, speaking calmly to the man. For 15 minutes, he talked, getting the man to lower the knife, convincing him to let the woman go. And it had worked. The woman was released and ran from the apartment to safety, but as she ran, the man had a sudden change of heart and lunged at James with the knife. In the struggle that followed, James managed to disarm the attacker and subdue him without using lethal force. However, during the fight, the man had managed to stab James twice, once in the shoulder and once in the leg. The leg wound had severed a major artery. By the time backup arrived and emergency services got James to the hospital, he had lost massive amounts of blood. The doctors managed to save his life, but despite their best efforts, they could not save his left leg below the knee. James Wright, who had spent his entire adult life serving and protecting, who had saved countless lives, lost his leg trying to save someone else. Marcus found himself wiping his eyes as he read the recovery reports. James had spent months in physical therapy, learning to use a prosthetic, trying to adapt to his new reality. The department had rallied around him, raising funds for his medical expenses and the prosthetic device. The police union had organized fundraisers and the community had donated generously. James had received one of the most advanced prosthetics available, custom-fitted and designed to give him the best possible mobility, but the story took a darker turn. 6 months after the incident, James had applied to return to active duty. Despite his excellent physical therapy progress and his determination, the department had denied his request. The official reason was that he could not pass the physical fitness requirements with his prosthetic. James had appealed the decision, arguing that he could still serve in some capacity, perhaps in training or community outreach. Each appeal was denied. Marcus found an article from the local newspaper dated 18 months ago. The headline read, "Decorated Officer Sues Department After Being Denied Return to Duty." James had taken legal action, claiming discrimination under disability laws. The case had dragged on for months, draining his savings and putting enormous stress on his family. In the end, he had lost. The court ruled that the physical requirements for active duty officers were legitimate and that the department had the right to enforce them. The final document in the file was a death certificate dated 8 months ago. James Wright had died from complications related to an infection, likely stemming from issues with his prosthetic and inadequate medical care. He was only 42 years old. The cause of death listed secondary factors. Depression and financial hardship had likely contributed to his declining health. He had lost his health insurance when he was forced to resign from the department, and the family could not afford the proper medical attention he needed. Marcus closed his laptop and sat in the darkness of his apartment. The pieces were falling into place now, painting a picture that made him feel sick to his stomach. Darius Wright was the son of a fallen hero, a man who had given everything for his community and had been abandoned by the very system he had served. The prosthetic that Marcus had confiscated was not stolen property. It was a memorial, a connection to a father who had been taken too soon, a symbol of sacrifice and service. He thought about the way Darius had said he only wore it for special occasions, like job interviews. The boy was trying to walk in his father's footsteps, literally carrying on despite losing everything. And Marcus, following procedure and doing everything by the book, had taken it away from him. Sleep did not come easy that night. Marcus tossed and turned, replaying the encounter in his mind. He had seen a suspicious kid with expensive equipment and had made assumptions based on appearances and circumstances. He had not bothered to dig deeper, to ask the right questions, to show compassion alongside his adherence to rules. He had been so focused on following procedure that he had failed to see the human being in front of him. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the station early, before his shift officially began. He went straight to the evidence room and requested the prosthetic he had logged the day before. The clerk on duty gave him a strange look but retrieved the item. Marcus examined it more carefully now, and he saw something he had missed before. Engraved on the inner surface of the prosthetic in small but clear letters were the words, "To Darius, with love. Walk tall, son, Dad." His heart sank even further. This was not just medical equipment. This was a gift from a dying father to his son, a legacy of strength and perseverance. And Marcus had treated it like evidence in a petty theft case. He went to his sergeant's office and knocked on the door. Rodriguez looked up from his paperwork, surprised to see Marcus so early. "Chun, what are you doing here?" "Your shift doesn't start for another hour. I need to talk to you about the prosthetic I logged yesterday." "The one from the right kid?" Rodriguez nodded. "Yeah, I was just about to call you about that. County General got back to us. They confirmed that none of their stolen equipment matches the description of what you found. Looks like it was a false alarm. You can release it if the kid comes back for it." Marcus took a deep breath. "Sarge, there's more to this story." "A lot more?" "The kid's name is Darius Wright. His father was James Wright. Does that name ring a bell?" Rodriguez's expression changed immediately. The color drained from his face as recognition dawned. "James Wright. Sergeant Wright. The one who lost his leg in that hostage situation a couple years back?" "The same. And he died 8 months ago. That prosthetic belonged to his father. It's all the kid has left of him." Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, running a hand over his face. "Oh, man. I remember James. Good cop. Really good cop. What he went through after losing that leg, the way the department handled it, that was a dark chapter for all of us. A lot of us felt it was wrong, but our hands were tied. Policy is policy." "Policy," Marcus repeated, the word tasting bitter in his mouth. "Yeah, I followed policy yesterday too. And in doing so, I took away something irreplaceable from a kid who's already lost everything. You were doing your job, Chun. You couldn't have known. But I should have asked more questions. I should have looked deeper. I saw a homeless black kid with expensive equipment and I jumped to conclusions. I didn't see him as a person with a story, just as a potential crime statistic." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "So what do you want to do about it?" "I want to find him and return his property. And I want to do more than that. This kid and his mother are living on the streets because we failed his father. The department failed him. We owe it to James's memory to make this right. The department can't just hand out money, Chun, you know that. I'm not asking the department to. I'm asking you to help me spread the word. Let's reach out to the union, to the officers who knew James, to the community. Let's do what we should have done for James when he was alive. Let's take care of his family." Rodriguez studied Marcus for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. I'll make some calls. But first, you need to find that kid and apologize. Make it right on a personal level before we try to fix the bigger picture." Marcus spent the rest of the morning tracking down Darius. He called the main library and asked if anyone had seen a teenage boy with crutches. The librarian remembered him and said he had spent the night there until closing time, reading in the corner. She mentioned he had asked about computers but did not have a library card. She had felt sorry for him and let him use one anyway. Marcus then checked with local shelters. On his third call, he found what he was looking for. A shelter coordinator confirmed that a woman named Sarah Wright and her son had checked in late the previous evening. They have finally gotten a bed after being on a waiting list for 2 days, without hesitation. Marcus got in his patrol car and drove to the Riverside Community Shelter, a modest building that provided temporary housing for homeless families. When he arrived, he asked to speak with Sarah Wright, explaining that he was there on official police business, but the morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet streets of Riverside as Officer Marcus Chun began his patrol shift. It was supposed to be an ordinary Tuesday, the kind where nothing much happened except for a few traffic violations and maybe a noise complaint or two. Marcus had been with the Riverside Police Department for 8 years, and he prided himself on following procedures to the letter. His record was spotless, his uniform always pressed, and his commitment to the rules unwavering. Around 10 in the morning, Marcus received a call about suspicious activity near the old Jefferson High School building. The school had been closed for renovations for the past 3 months, and there had been reports of kids breaking in to explore the abandoned classrooms. As he pulled up to the chain-link fence surrounding the property, he noticed a small figure moving near the back entrance. The boy looked to be around 13 or 14 years old. He was thin, with dark skin and close-cropped hair, wearing a faded blue hoodie and jeans that had seen better days. What caught Marcus's attention immediately was the way the boy moved. There was something off about his gait, a slight mechanical quality that seemed unusual. Marcus approached slowly, his hand resting near his radio. The boy was trying to climb through a gap in the fence, struggling with something that appeared to be weighing him down. It was a large duffel bag, worn and patched in several places. "Hey, stop right there," Marcus called out, his voice firm but not aggressive. "This is private property. What are you doing here?" The boy froze, his eyes wide with fear. For a moment, it looked like he might run, but then his shoulders slumped in defeat. He turned slowly to face the officer, his hands trembling slightly. "I wasn't doing nothing wrong, sir," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was just passing through." Marcus walked closer, his trained eyes scanning the situation. The boy's hoodie had a small tear on the sleeve, and his sneakers were held together with duct tape. But what really caught the officer's attention was the way the boy stood, favoring his right leg in an odd manner. "What's your name, son?" Marcus asked, pulling out his notepad. "Darius." "Darius Wright," the boy replied, his eyes fixed on the ground. "And what's in the bag, Darius?" The boy's grip on the duffel bag tightened. "Just my stuff. Personal things." Marcus had heard that line 100 times before. In his experience, when kids said they had personal things in a bag near an abandoned building, it usually meant stolen property or something they didn't want police to see. Following standard procedure, he needed to check. "I'm going to need you to open that bag for me, Darius. If you've got nothing to hide, this will just take a minute." Darius's eyes filled with something that looked like panic mixed with desperation. "Please, officer, you don't understand. I really need to get going. My mom's waiting for me." "Then the sooner you cooperate, the sooner you can get to your mom," Marcus replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. With shaking hands, Darius slowly unzipped the duffel bag. Inside, Marcus could see clothes, a few books, what looked like a toothbrush, and some toiletries. But beneath all of that, wrapped carefully in an old towel, was something that made Marcus's eyebrows rise. It was a prosthetic leg, advanced-looking and clearly expensive. "Where did you get this?" Marcus asked, his suspicion immediately aroused. A prosthetic like that could cost thousands of dollars. What was a kid who looked like he could barely afford new shoes doing with such expensive medical equipment? "It's mine," Darius said quickly, tears starting to form in his eyes. "I swear it's mine. Please don't take it." Marcus pulled the prosthetic from the bag, examining it. It was definitely high-end, with sophisticated joint mechanisms and what looked like custom fittings. He had seen enough stolen property in his career to know that expensive items in the hands of kids in rough circumstances often had questionable origins. "This is medical equipment worth thousands of dollars. Darius, I'm going to need more than just, 'it's mine' as an explanation. Do you have any documentation?" "A prescription?" Anything that proves this belongs to you? Darius reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It was a prescription form, but it was old, faded, and partially torn. The name was barely legible, and there was no recent date on it. "This could be anyone's prescription," Marcus said, shaking his head. "And it's too old to be valid. I'm going to have to confiscate this until we can verify ownership. There have been reports of medical equipment thefts from the county hospital, and this fits the description." "No, please." Darius's voice cracked as he spoke. "You can't take it. I need it. It's really mine, I promise. I've had it for 2 years. Marcus felt a twinge of sympathy, but his training kicked in. Rules were rules, and procedures existed for a reason. He couldn't just take a kid's word for it, especially not with property this valuable. If it was stolen, returning it could help someone who desperately needed it. If it belonged to Darius, then proper documentation would clear everything up. "Listen, Darius, if this really is yours, we can sort this out at the station. You can call your mom, she can bring proper documentation, and you'll get it back. But I can't let you walk away with what might be stolen property. Do you understand?" Tears were now streaming down Darius's face. "My mom doesn't have a phone right now? We can't afford it. And all my papers are at my grandmother's house across town. Please, sir, I'm telling you the truth." Marcus pulled out an evidence bag and carefully placed the prosthetic inside, tagging it with a case number. "I'm sorry, but I have to follow procedure. Now, do you need this leg right now? Are you supposed to be wearing it?" Darius wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "No, sir. I only wear it for special occasions, like job interviews and stuff. I mostly use crutches because the prosthetic hurts after a while." Marcus looked at the boy more carefully now. He did have crutches strapped to the outside of his duffel bag, which he hadn't noticed before. The story was starting to make a bit more sense, but it still didn't explain why Darius was at an abandoned school building with all his possessions in a bag. "Where are you headed, Darius? And why are you carrying all your stuff around?" The boy's eyes darted away. "I told you I'm going to meet my mom. With everything you own in a bag? Come on, son, you can do better than that. Are you running away from home?" Darius was silent for a long moment before he finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "We got evicted yesterday. Mom's trying to find us a place at a shelter, but they didn't have room last night. I slept at the bus station, and I was supposed to meet her at the library, but I took a shortcut and ended up here." Marcus felt his heart sink a little. He had heard similar stories before, families living on the edge, one emergency away from homelessness. But his job wasn't to be a social worker. His job was to enforce the law and follow procedures. "I'm sorry to hear that, Darius, I really am. But that doesn't change the situation with this prosthetic. I still need to verify ownership. Tell you what, I'll give you a ride to wherever your mom is supposed to meet you. You can explain the situation to her, and she can come to the station with proper documentation. Fair enough?" Darius nodded slowly, defeat written all over his young face. As Marcus loaded the duffel bag and the evidence bag containing the prosthetic into his patrol car, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. The boy seemed genuinely devastated, not like someone caught with stolen goods, but like someone who had just lost something precious during the drive to the library. Marcus tried to make conversation, asking about school and Darius's interests. The boy mentioned that he liked to read, especially history books, and that he had been doing well in school before they lost their apartment. He talked about wanting to be an engineer someday, designing better prosthetics that poor kids like him could actually afford. When they arrived at the library, Marcus helped Darius carry his bag to the entrance. "Listen, I want to help you, but I need you to understand that I have to do my job. Have your mom bring documentation to the Riverside station. Ask for Officer Chun, and I'll make sure we handle this as quickly as possible." Darius nodded, his eyes still red from crying. "Yes, sir. Thank you for the ride." As Marcus drove away, he glanced in his rearview mirror and saw Darius sitting on the library steps, his head in his hands. Something about the whole situation bothered him, an itch he couldn't quite scratch. But he pushed the feeling aside. He had followed procedure. He had done his job by the book. Back at the station, Marcus logged the prosthetic into evidence and filed his report. His sergeant, a veteran officer named Rodriguez, read through the details and nodded approvingly. Good work. Chin, we've had 3 reports of stolen medical equipment from County General in the past month. This might be connected. The kid seemed pretty adamant it was his, Marcus said, surprised at his own need to defend Darius. Rodriguez shrugged. They always do. If it's really his, he'll come back with proof. If not, we just recovered stolen property. Either way, you did the right thing. Marcus went about the rest of his shift, but he couldn't stop thinking about Darius. The way the boy had clutched that bag, the genuine fear in his eyes when the prosthetic was confiscated. It didn't fit the pattern of someone caught with stolen goods. Thieves usually gave up easily once they were caught. They didn't cry like their world was ending. As the afternoon wore. Sarah Wright wiped her eyes and looked at Marcus with a mixture of gratitude and long-held pain. Officer, I appreciate you coming here and apologizing. Most people in uniform don't do that. But you need to understand something. When James lost his leg, he didn't just lose a body part. He lost his identity, his purpose, everything he had built his life around. Being a police officer was not just a job for him. It was who he was. Marcus nodded, gesturing to the small chair by the window. May I sit? I would like to hear about him, if you are willing to share. Sarah and Darius exchanged glances, and then Sarah nodded. They all sat down, and she began to speak, her voice carrying the weight of memories both beautiful and painful. James grew up in this neighborhood, in the same streets he later patrolled as an officer. His father left when he was young, and his mother worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat. He saw the crime, the drugs, the way poverty trapped people in cycles they could not escape. But he also saw good police officers, the ones who actually cared about the community, who knew people's names and looked out for the kids. He wanted to be like them. Darius picked up the story, his voice quiet but steady. Dad used to tell me that being a police officer was about more than enforcing laws. He said it was about being a guardian, a protector, someone who stood between good people and the chaos of the world. He believed in that. He really believed in it. Sarah continued, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. When he got hurt saving that woman, I was terrified. The hospital called me in the middle of the night, and I just knew something terrible had happened. When I got there and they told me about his leg, my first thought was relief. He was alive. We could deal with anything else as long as he was alive. But the recovery was hard, Darius added. Dad was in so much pain, not just physical pain, but emotional too. He kept saying he needed to get back to work, that his team needed him, that the community needed him. He pushed himself so hard in physical therapy. I watched him fall down 100 times learning to walk with that prosthetic. And every single time he got back up, Marcus listened intently. Seeing James Wright not as a file in a database, but as a real person, a father, a husband, a man who had fought for every step he took. Sarah's voice cracked as she spoke. When the department rejected his application to return to duty, something broke inside him. He tried to hide it from us, tried to stay positive, but I could see it eating away at him. He filed that lawsuit not because he wanted money or revenge. He just wanted his job back. He wanted to serve. But the legal battle drained us financially and emotionally. We lost our savings, then our house. James had to take whatever work he could find, jobs that did not offer health insurance. That is when the infection started, Darius said, his voice barely above a whisper. His prosthetic was not fitting right anymore, and we could not afford to get it adjusted properly. It rubbed against his skin, creating sores that would not heal. Mom kept telling him to see a doctor, but he said we could not afford it. He just kept wrapping it with bandages and hoping it would get better. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. By the time we finally got him to a free clinic, the infection had spread into his bloodstream. They sent him to the emergency room, but even then, without insurance, the treatment was limited. They did what they could, but it was not enough. He fought for 3 weeks in that hospital bed, and then he was gone. Just like that. My husband, Darius's father, a man who gave everything to help others, died because we could not afford proper medical care. The room fell silent except for the quiet sounds of crying. Marcus found himself struggling to maintain his composure. This was not just a tragedy. It was an injustice, a systemic failure that had destroyed a family. After Dad died, Darius said, wiping his eyes with his sleeve, Mom tried to keep us in the apartment. But without Dad's income, we just could not make it. She works at a grocery store, but it is not enough for rent and food and everything else. We got evicted 3 weeks ago. That prosthetic leg, the one you took yesterday, it is the only thing I have left of my father. He gave it to me a month before he died. He said that when I wore it, I would walk with his strength. Marcus felt as though he had been punched in the gut. He had not just confiscated property. He had taken away a son's last connection to his father, a symbol of strength and legacy during the darkest time of their lives. I cannot tell you how sorry I am, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. What happened to your family should never have happened. Your father deserved better. You both deserve better. And I'm going to do everything in my power to help make things right. He stood up and went to his patrol car, returning with the evidence bag containing the prosthetic. He carefully removed it and handed it to Darius. The boy clutched it to his chest, fresh tears flowing. Thank you, Darius whispered. Thank you so much. But Marcus was not done. Over the next several days, he became a man on a mission. He reached out to every officer who had worked with James Wright, sharing the story of what had happened to his family. The response was overwhelming. Officers who remembered James, who had respected him, who felt guilty about how the department had handled his situation, all wanted to help. The police union organized a fundraiser. Within a week, they had collected enough money to cover 3 months of rent for Sarah and Darius in a modest apartment. Local businesses, hearing about the story through news coverage that Marcus helped facilitate, donated furniture, clothes, and household supplies. Marcus also contacted the police department's Human Resources Department and discovered that as the widow of an officer who died from complications related to a line-of-duty injury, Sarah was entitled to certain benefits that she had never applied for because she did not know they existed. He helped her navigate the paperwork, ensuring she would receive a small monthly pension and health insurance coverage. But perhaps the most significant change came from within the department itself. Sergeant Rodriguez, moved by the story and feeling the weight of institutional guilt, began pushing for policy reforms. He argued that officers injured in the line of duty should have better support systems, better transition programs, and more opportunities to continue serving in capacities that match their abilities rather than being pushed out entirely. The chief of police, facing pressure from both inside and outside the department, agreed to review the policies. While change would not come overnight, the conversation had started. James Wright's sacrifice would not be forgotten, and his legacy would be one that pushed the department to do better. 2 weeks after their encounter at the shelter, Marcus visited Sarah and Darius in their new apartment. It was small but clean, in a safe neighborhood with good schools. Darius had enrolled in Jefferson High School, the same school his father had attended, and was already talking excitedly about joining the robotics club. Officer Chun, Sarah said as she welcomed him in, I do not know how to thank you. You have changed our lives. Marcus shook his head. Please call me Marcus. And I did not do this alone. This was a community coming together to support one of their own. Your husband gave so much to this city. It is only right that the city gives back to his family. Darius came out of his room walking on his father's prosthetic leg. He was still getting used to wearing it regularly, but his physical therapist said he was making excellent progress. Marcus had connected the family with a prosthetic specialist who was donating his time to ensure the leg was properly fitted. How does it feel? Marcus asked. Darius smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his whole face. It still hurts sometimes, but every time I wear it, I feel like my dad is with me. Like he is helping me stand tall? Your father would be proud of you, Darius. You have been through more than most adults face in a lifetime, and you have handled it with courage and grace. I want to be like him, Darius said. "I want to help people. Maybe not as a police officer, but in some way that makes a difference." Dad always said that service was not about the uniform. It was about the heart. Over the following months, Marcus became a regular presence in the Wright family's life. He was not just checking on them as a duty. He genuinely cared about their well-being. He attended Darius's school events, helped Sarah navigate job opportunities, and became something of a mentor to the boy, who had lost his father too soon. The relationship was transformative for Marcus as well. He began to see his job differently. Rules and procedures were important, but they were tools, not ends in themselves. The real purpose of police work was to serve and protect people, to see their humanity, to understand their stories. He started spending more time in community outreach, talking to kids, building relationships, trying to be the kind of officer that James Wright had been 6 months after that fateful day at the fence. The police department held a memorial service for James Wright. It was long overdue, an acknowledgement of his service and sacrifice. Officers came from all over the state to pay their respects. The chief of police gave a speech about James's dedication and announced new policies to better support injured officers. Sarah and Darius sat in the front row, surrounded by the community that had rallied around them. When it was time for family members to speak, Darius stood up, walking to the podium with his father's prosthetic leg, his head held high.